Welcome to the Artist Dojo, where I will be speaking with artists, craftspeople, and creators of all kinds in order to see how they navigate a life in the arts. My name is Afrim Jambalai. I'm your host, and today's guest is David Butler. He is an eclectic artist, actor, and designer living in Buffalo, New York. Over the last 15 years, he has transitioned to the film industry and has production designed or art directed 13 motion pictures. So if you want to find out what those motion pictures are, please go to imdb.com just because with the writer's strike and the SAG strike, we won't be talking about certain productions, but you can, for your own edification, go to imdb.com and check that out. Um, David has designed and created 51 professional theater and dance sets in a variety of theaters across Western New York. Butler has written, designed, and produced dozens of installations and full on theatrical pieces, often blurring the edges of traditional stage drama by combining traditional theater with live music, modern dance, spoken word, visual art, and new media in his work. Literally, the list goes on and on because he's done so much, and I'm really happy to have him on. David Butler, thank you for being at the Artist Dojo.
It's my pleasure. It really is. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm thinking the first time I can't necessarily put my finger on when we first met, but I know when we first worked together, which is probably the same time frame. Um, a Christmas Twist, directed by Peter Michael
Peter
Marino,
Buckle.
back in probably 2010, I believe it was,
Yeah. Wow. Counting.
and that was that
I
was
don't like
that was a
counting.
yeah. Time is fleeting. But that was a lot of fun, and I remember uh, just really being impressed by your your demeanor always being in a positive space when you are working. Like you have a genuine joy and eagerness about the things that you do, and it's infectious. So I've always really appreciated that about you, and that's the thing that kind of for me stands out. So also one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. So that's my first impression. If you remember that. Otherwise, I pretty much have a goldfish memory, and I can't remember too much.
No, that was a fun show. In fact, I have nothing but fond memories of that because it was a great cast and a really silly production. And I remember you being right in with the rest of us being ridiculous and silly. I mean, regarding the attitude is that I had day jobs for many years, and I did theater and whatever at night. And now I'm at a point where I'm following my bliss, and I'm sometimes it's a struggle, but I love what I do. And whether it's theater or film or whatever, it's like who gets to do this? So I try to be as egoless as I can because that makes it so much more fun, and just try to in my own little circle of influence, create a space where it's fun to be creative and work together. Because it's the best thing in the world.
Well, it shows. It really does. I think a lot of people have love for these art forms, but it doesn't. No, it's all right. I heard something click. I was like, did I roll the dice yet? No, I was like,
No, no, it was
uh,
the dice in my ear. But yeah,
yeah. Well, I was saying that there are a lot of people who love these art forms, but it somehow expresses in them through stress or other means, and just something very particular about your character that I enjoy. You're like that I enjoy. You happen to be one of those people that I think to myself, oh, I would always look forward to working with this person. So anyway, just wanted to say that before we get into any questions.
that means a
Um,
lot. Thanks.
yeah. So in the past, artists were an integral part of society and culture, from storytellers to griots, tribal elders to iconoclasts, etc. Do you think that the artist is still an integral part of today's society?
That is a very deep question. And I think the answer to that is a full caps yes with many exclamation points. But I also think that uh, business has taken over the arts on many levels, whether it's gallery artists or Broadway or film. And so some of the reasons why art exists has been hampered by the want of profit and so it's not necessarily doing what it's supposed to be doing. Does that make sense? Um, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I have and it's funny because I have a quote upstairs in my little house here from Bertolt Brecht, and I may be paraphrasing a little bit, but it's art is not a reflection of society, but a hammer with which to shape it, and that's sort of how I feel about what the arts should do, and we have a tendency to everything is about likes and all that. So people have a tendency just to keep regurgitating the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, we just went through a pandemic, and I think after every major experience like that, there's been, it takes a little while to sort of get past the like, oh my God, what just happened period. But what is art now? What is, what is it? How do we heal? How do we reconnect? How do we create community again? And I think the arts do that when they're at their best.
So that hammer that shapes society, it just made me think, it could be like a, in the hand of a carpenter, or it could be in the hand of a demolition man. That same hammer, the intention behind how they want to, do you want to create or do you want to destroy? And it's in some ways it is part of the cycle of creation. But I think, yeah, that's an interesting take with the Bertolt Brecht quote regarding that, because now it makes me think, yeah, there are different ways. It's like, are you creating to knock down maybe previous walls? That just it's such a deep commentary. So I'm
Yeah.
actually gonna look that quote up and put it up in the show notes for this.
Okay. No, it's. I think about it almost every day when I walk past it because like it could mean so many different things. Um,
Yeah,
I think whether it is reflecting back to society of like, look what you've become, or it's like, hey, look at this, look how beautiful this is. You probably didn't look at it this way before. So
yeah.
it's all those things, and that's why there's so many different kinds of art, so many different forms of art.
So do you see yourself as an artist, craftsperson, both, neither, something else altogether?
I'm laughing because
Does
that's
there need to
kind
be
of an
a
age
title
old.
to it?
Not not for me. I since I was a kid, and it still happens occasionally, where people say, "What kind of art do you do?" or "What are you?" And I have never had an answer. It actually makes it hard for me in grant writing because you always have to fill in a box. Like, are you a painter, a sculptor, a writer? And I'm all those things. I think one of the best compliments I ever got was from a close friend who was describing me to somebody else, and this other person said, "Oh, so Dave's one of those people that thinks outside the box." And my friend said, "Dave doesn't even see the box." And I think that's sort of and I don't like, I don't see, I have the same, I go through the same creative process, whether I'm writing a poem or building a set or taking on a character or creating an experience or an installation. It's because to me, the whole creative thing it annoys me sometimes that there are boxes around things because there's no reason for them. It's just a construct that we've created because people like to put things in boxes. But it's so much more fun when there is no box because then um, you can move between things that are categorized, like between modern dance and theater and spoken word and live music, and all those things can be put together in an infinite number of ways, and that's fun. When I was in college, I got introduced to. It was during that period where like people kept telling me I had to decide, like, are you going to be an actor or a designer or an artist or what? And there's an artist named Laurie Anderson, who has been a prolific artist for years. And I went to see her, and she blew my mind because she was writing her own words. She was not only writing her own music, but creating her own instruments, performing them live in the theatrical sort of way. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to do that kind of stuff. So that was the sort of the she was probably the first of many artists that I got introduced to through like the Hall Walls art gallery locally in Buffalo that sort of helped me to realize that I didn't have to pick something.
Yeah, so not wanting to feel confined by any preconceived notion of what by whatever that box is on the grant paperwork, you know.
Yes, exactly,
There you should be like
exactly.
not applicable.
Right? Well, now they have words like interdisciplinary or multimedia,
Okay.
and those work for me.
Yeah.
But in the early days, that didn't happen.
So what initially inspired you to pursue a career in all the things that you do? Was there a specific moment that stands out to you? Maybe like a inception point of where you started pursuing the arts?
Um, well, that's another complex question for me. I mean, I came to Buffalo and went to school at Buff State with the plan to be a graphic designer. And I can't say I got bored, but I kind of got bored with it because it wasn't as creative as I thought. So, sort of behind my parents' back, I started taking fine arts. And then I guess the big moment with the theatrical end of all this is that I went to see a play on the Buff State campus called Streamers, and this play was so intense that I don't think you could do it now on a college campus. It was very controversial, very in your face. It was about young men going off to Vietnam, there was homosexual sex on stage. There was all kinds of crazy stuff. There was nudity. There was violence, but when as good theater does, when the lights came up, you were not the same person you were when you went in the theater. And I was so blown away. I went back to see it three more times, and then I joined the theater club and never looked back. And in fact, I had to go an extra year of college to get my graphic design degree. So so that was that, and that added on. But I was also in the choir. I was taking creative writing. So it all just sort of I guess the seeds of this all were sown in college because I was taking all
Okay.
these different things. Yeah, even a painter. One of my painting professors. I think I left my. It was sort of a journal sketchbook, and I remember him accusing me of being more of a writer than a painter at one point. And that's one of those like somebody trying to put me in a box thing because
Yeah,
my
like you
my
were a
sketchbook was
spy or something.
yeah well like he didn't like the fact that I was writing poetry in my sketchbook. Like what, like who cares? So I think that's all
Yeah,
this is sort of probably
Look at Neil Gaiman or Alan Moore or all these like great comic book writers. They did that. They wrote like these
yeah.
beautiful monologues of next art, and it's just it's so funny how people want to put things in a box. Sorry, I cut you off. It just like blew my mind that that was even a perspective at the time. You know?
Yep. Yep. And but I guess that's part of the thing. If you're in a good school, which I was, that you find your own way and you stop listening to your professors and you stop listening to people outside and you decide yourself what you are and you find your own way and you're on your own journey. It's that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think there was any specific moment. It just sort of gradually happened. Like the path just sort of laid itself out before me as I was on it. Oh, that was heavy.
I also I also love that you said behind your parents' back you took finance. I thought you were going to say theater.
No,
Like,
no, no, no,
no
not
son of
no,
mine,
definitely
no
not
son of
finance.
mine's going to do finance.
No, it wasn't not finance, fine arts. Sorry, my diction was bad. I
Oh, I'm
was not
sorry. I'm
not
sorry. I'm sorry. Okay.
oh, yeah, yeah.
I
No, I wish
misunderstood
I'd
because
taken more.
that's a really funny skit though right there.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
son of
Oh
mine's
yeah.
taking finance.
Yeah, that's not. I
Um,
wish I'd taken more finance. That probably would have been good for me. But yeah, no, no. Well, basically, as opposed to taking, I was taking graphic design, but I also started taking painting. Uh, but I didn't tell my parents I was taking it because I'm sure they would have been very conservative, you know,
yes,
uh,
yes.
family I was raised in. You know, my perfect all American suburb, which is that's another whole issue. But
Yeah.
no interest in
So,
ever again.
yeah, and breaking away from that, I mean, it's challenging, we come from these backgrounds and then you go into different environments, and especially like larger academic environments, I think that have, and that's the big positive of it, is you are exposed to people with different perspectives. Hopefully, you kind of reduce the amount of echo chambers that you're inside of, and you see all these different things, and then you experience different things and you learn different things. And I think that's a huge benefit to people. It's great to have community, it's great to have support in that way, but I think also maybe at a certain point in everyone's life, you just have to get kind of like put into the catapult and sent into like diverse spaces.
Yeah, I think that's one of the huge advantages of college is it's not just the academics where and I always say that you're not even just learning things, your brain is being literally formed, so that you think better, but it's also learning how to get along with people and how to work together and create together, particularly if you're in the arts anyway. I guess that's true of a business class
Yeah.
too.
um, how do you navigate the practical aspects of life with your creative pursuits? Is there such thing as a work-life balance?
Right? You have good questions, my friend. Uh, and it's you're asking me this at a very weird time. I had day jobs for I worked in the not-for-profit industry for 17 years doing fundraising and PR and all that sort of stuff. And I would do that all day, and then I would rehearse or build sets, sometimes both, until 2 o'clock in the morning. And there were times where I was falling asleep at staff meetings, but I I think throughout all of those years, the if someone had said to me, "You have to choose between theater or this job," I probably would have quit because um, I don't. I think at this point I'm pretty clear on the fact that I don't. I get up in the morning because I want to make stuff. I want to create things. So the day job was fun. I enjoyed doing it. I think I was pretty good at some of the stuff that I did, but my it supported the stuff that I really wanted to do. And now that I'm more doing that, I mean, it's weird now because my film career was doing really great, and then COVID happened, and then they screwed up the tax credit in New York State, and then now the writers' strike and the actors' strike, and I'm in solidarity with all of them. But it's like, oh my God, like, so I'm sort of back into this like
Yeah,
struggling artist period, which is unpleasant, at my age. But it'll come back. But I've got good things
yeah,
happening.
with the strike, you just agree basically you're going to collectively take the hit with everybody, kind of arm in arm, because there were a number of really positive things that were happening in my career, like a really good momentum build.
Hmm.
And, you just have to, at some point, sacrifice that momentum or try to roll with the punches. And that's also a little bit of what I'm doing with this, because it's something that I wanted to do for a while. And I think I just allowed maybe a negative mindset to stop me from pushing forward and having these types of conversations and putting them out and worrying like, oh, who am I to be having these conversations and putting them out, and like, so I'm over all that stuff. I just want to do my best to put something out that's going to help people. The in a cosmic sense, if it was like the, you know, late teens, early 20s, a Frim had access to podcasts, he'd be listening to this and taking notes and trying to do better. So,
Hmm.
um, anyway, side
Yeah,
note,
no,
thank
it's
you for
good.
that.
No, I think
What?
that's sorry. I was gonna say I think the trick in these periods is to keep doing stuff, whether it's classes or teaching classes or keeping your mind open. Sometimes I force, when I'm having a bad day, I'll force myself to go for a walk and look for beautiful things, right? Because it helps uh, to get out of the funk of whatever stress you might be under financially or whatever. So
I like that. Look for beautiful things. Yeah.
yeah, I did that a lot during COVID, and I did it like kind of like you were saying. I did it for me, but I also did it for people that were listening because I know a lot of people were in a bad spot. And I believe that without getting too goofy, but it's I could go outside right now and walk down the street and find flowers that are blooming, or something that's just laying somewhere in a cool way that's worthy of a photograph. You know, but it's getting in that mindset of uh, that it's not all bad, that there's beauty everywhere. You just have to
Yeah.
look at life in that framework.
Yeah. It reminds me of I'll go to the gym often, and sometimes on certain days I might not be feeling it or whatever, and I'm on the treadmill or just literally just walking, and I'll see somebody walk in, and they're clearly having difficulty, whether it's with a cane or issues with posture or something like that, and it's just like, oh my god, it washes over me, and it gives me this like boost of that's such a beautiful like that grit, that capacity for people to push through this perceived limitation that they have. And for me, that's like when you say look for beautiful things, like when I see that in life, it like is a gut punch in the best way possible. And then somehow I'm like infused with energy again to create or to do the thing that I originally set out to do. So I really love that piece of advice. Look for beautiful things. That is yeah, that's great. Um,
Thank you.
how do you let's see, what strategies do you use to overcome creative blocks or periods of low inspiration? It's kind of funny how that went directly into that.
um, I have. It depends on what it is. Sometimes, hmm, I think sometimes it's okay to embrace. I'm going to back up even further. I think life should be embraced uh, in all aspects. I think you should embrace happiness. You should embrace sadness. You should embrace if you're having a bad day. It's okay to say, "Hey, I'm having a bad day, and I'm going to immerse myself in that feeling." Because I think what happens is it goes away faster. It's when you resist it, like I'm not going to be sad today. Then it's just and I learned this unfortunately in the '80s when I lost a lot of friends to the AIDS, HIV stuff. That I learned that you have to take the time to mourn, and you have to take the time to spend with that person that you've lost, because otherwise it piles up and it becomes glue. So so that's the overall general thing. But there's other things. One of a really great exercise that I learned a long time ago that works not only for writing, but I think for any kind of creative block is this thing called writing pages. I think it comes from a book called I think it's Writing on the Left Side of the Brain or something. And you basically take a pad of paper. You can do it on a computer, but it works better if you're physically writing it, and you just decide that you're going to spend however many time or however many pages, and you're going to fill the page with whatever comes into your head. So it's like a flow of consciousness thing. So no rules, no guilt, no shame. Whatever comes out of your head, if it's a string of profanity or some sort of disgusting, whatever, it's okay because you're going to destroy this. You're going to rip it up afterwards. But one of my writer friends called it blowing your nose because it takes that hard top off, so that you can break through. And I can't tell you how many times and people that I've suggested this to have thanked me later. It doesn't work every time. Sometimes it takes a couple days to do it, but it's just, particularly if there's a lot of shit. And I think we all have a lot of that right now. But just so it's just this like a flow of consciousness, and you can write. I can't think of anything to write right now. Oh my God, the walls in my room are green. I really should clean that thing up over on the couch. It's whatever comes into your head. And like I said, what it does is it sort of opens the door and to whatever is keeping you from getting to where you need to go creatively. So,
Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice because say the last few months I've been actually steadily journaling, excuse me, and even keeping this little like notebook just to write things down because I realized that I kind of uh, deal with decision fatigue and keeping things in
mm,
my mind that like will stress me out. So instead, if I put it down on paper, I tried doing it in the past on a phone, but I noticed that the phone is kind of made for distraction. So then I would get distracted and start doing something else. I have a distractible mind sometimes. And then, so if I find that I'm writing it down, it's better because now I can just have it on paper, look at it, be like, oh, that's not important, crumble it up, throw it out, or be like, okay, I need to refine this idea, or I need to make a list based on this thing that needs to get done. So it's better to, it gets lost in the void up here. So I'd rather put it down on paper. So I think that's a really great suggestion of just like writing and free flowing on that stuff.
and I would say that the difference between journaling and what I'm talking about is that you're, how do I say this? You're deciding in the writing pages that you're literally going to destroy it. And the purpose of that is that whatever's in your head, because you don't, there's that thing. It's like, what if I lose this and somebody finds it and I spewed all
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
stuff out, you know? The other thing I will just say along the same lines of creative block is that someone told me, an artist friend of mine told me this a long time ago, that it's okay to sit in front of the television. It's okay to, waste time at an art gallery. And he defined it as filling your cup because you're filling yourself up with for me it's like color palettes or words or whatever, and you need that arsenal of stuff to then draw from later on. And that's another great thing is just to go through an art gallery and not think of it as art. Think of it as, and I tell my film students this, it's paintings in a rectangle, but it's screenshots. It's like you're being shown how to line up the camera, to frame something so it's balanced, like all that stuff. So just walking on the street, same thing. Um, it's those
Yeah.
are the things where the creativity comes from. Is those uh, that I don't know the I can't think of the right word. Just having the a bank of things, to draw from.
Yeah. Like a picture in every frame of the film, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, so, how do you handle the financial challenges that often come up with being an artist? I know you mentioned working all types of jobs and staying up until like, 2 in the morning and then, kind of finding yourself falling asleep at these jobs that you would be willing to, if it was a choice between the two, you'd be willing to leave. But how do you then, what's the philosophy of dealing with financial challenges?
I think I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think after all these years, um, when things are well, and again, it's prioritizing. It's making just being as organized as possible. Always being open to um, things you're not expecting. And now because we live in an internet world. You got to keep your uh, maybe this is an old way of saying this, but you got to keep your resume on the top. So when you post, something you're working on, uh, if someone's thinking about they need a designer for something, if I'm reminding people that I'm here, that's one of the ways to do it. Um, I think the other thing is just, I think maybe we had talked about this before, is just the surviving, knowing how to cook, knowing how to save money and use it in a smart way. Like I grew up in the era of like when you're poor, you bought Kraft macaroni and cheese, right? And no nutritional value. You eat a bowl of that, and a half hour you're
Yeah.
hungry again. So now it's for me, it's like making giant vats of soup, that's full of vegetables and stuff, and I sometimes I freeze it so it'll last for weeks, if I do it right. So I guess it's just little things like that that get you through the rough periods. Um, I don't know if I did I answer your question.
Yeah, no, that does. It actually inherently inside of it, there's a philosophy of like kind of thinking ahead for yourself. Because I think when you're caught in the hustle and bustle of everything, it's easy to stop at a fast food place or, hey, let me throw this mac and cheese in the microwave real quick. But it's not something that's going to necessarily sustain you. So I found, like kind of talking in regard to diet and finances, like I would say, okay, this is my morning, stuff that I could make very quickly and easily that is sustainable and helps me have energy. And then I started, pre-making my meals for the week. And when I would think I would work these jobs, and if I was, let's say, at the time in the city, Manhattan, and I would buy lunch in Manhattan. I mean, come on, you're spending like, let's say, upwards of $20, and then
Yeah,
depending on how much you're making an hour, 20 times 5 days a week times, you just realize like how much cash you're spending on that versus, okay, if I pre-make my stuff, then instead of spending that, I can put it towards headshots. I can put it towards, a camera eventually. I could put it towards all these things. So for me, when I started to become aware of that and how much I was spending, I could make better decisions based on that. So I think, yeah, you did answer the question.
good. Okay, yeah, yeah.
Um, what role does networking and building relationships play in your artistic journey?
Oh my God, that it's huge, particularly in the film industry, more than any other industry that I've worked in. You have to make friends. You have to, as much as you can, stay in touch. If you have a good work ethic, and as you mentioned before, I'm fun to work with, uh, that you'll get noticed, and people will remember you. And a lot of the industry is about knowing somebody. It's really hard to get into if you don't, because people don't trust you, and all it takes is one bad person to sour an entire production. And I've certainly experienced that. I One of my philosophies is ego kills creativity, and there's a lot of ego in film. And But if I'm lucky enough to be the production designer, I've learned to surround myself with the best people that I know and that I love working with, and then we have a blast, even when there may be difficulties coming from somewhere else. But networking is huge, and it comes from you know again, many of us artists are introverts, so it's sometimes hard. I'm not the kind of person that wants to go to I'm not really, I've never been really a joiner of groups and stuff, which has caused me trouble in theater at times when I don't want to be a part of your family, because I'm just an introverted person, right? But I still, you still keep good relationships with those people. And
Yeah.
it's funny because someone told me when I hit 40 that you sort of have an opportunity to take two paths. One is that you're going to get old, and turn to stone, I guess. And the other is to realize that the people that you met maybe earlier in your life are going to come back into your life. The things that you've learned through your life will start to sort of fit into a puzzle, and that networking is all part of that. And that's exactly what's happened with me. So people that I haven't talked to in years sort of show up, and now they're producing, and now they're whatever. So that networking thing is really important.
Yeah, those paths intersect again. They usually do. It's very interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
Excuse me. How do you stay motivated and committed to your creative projects in the face of life's challenges? I know you gave a good example of the staying up. You're like, hey, I'm working a full time job, but I'm still going to stay up until 2 in the morning to get this thing done. But are there other ways that you kind of stay committed, stay motivated? Quotes on the wall like the Bertolt Brecht thing, or something else?
Um, I wow, I I immerse myself in whatever I'm working on. So, uh, it's funny because a friend of mine who was an opera singer told me one time that if she's singing a Mozart opera or doing some sort of music, maybe she's singing one song in a concert, she immerses herself in Mozart, like she just fills herself with. So if I'm working on a film that's a certain genre or a certain time period, I immerse myself in that, uh, not necessarily in the genre because I don't want to get distracted, but and that's where the inspiration comes from. And then once I get in the zone, uh, I don't stay up. How do I say this? I'm trying to think if this is true as I say it. I don't necessarily stay up late because I have to. It's because I want to, because I'm having so much fun. Like I worked on a horror film, right? And I just remember one specific night that I think they were shooting late, but I was technically done probably at 9 o'clock in the evening. But I was in my office at 2 o'clock in the morning mixing different things together to make the perfect slime for this one effect. And I was like an 8-year old in my room because someone said, like, Butler, what are you still doing? What are you up, doing up this late? And I'm like, I'm making slime. So whatever it is, right? I mean, I go back to the thing I said before. I'm making a movie. I mean, who gets to do that, right? If you're not enjoying yourself, go get a bank job because the rest of us will have fun. That's sort of how I feel about it. And there's certainly people
Yeah.
that I would like to say that to at times, right?
Um, what impact does your personal environment or workspace have on your creative output? Do you need that mad scientist energy where the space is like a tornado, or does it need to be immaculate somewhere in between?
Tornado. I'm not showing you the rest of my
Okay.
room right now. No,
Okay.
I fight. I'm one of those kind of people that constantly fights the chaos. But as soon as I clean up a space at my workshop, which I'll be doing later this week because I have to dig out from a couple of projects. As soon as I clean a table off, I will be like, "Oh wow, I can do that now," and I'll make another mess. And sometimes when I'm really in the zone, I will push one mess off of the table so I can start the next one. You know, because I get pretty wound up about stuff sometimes. So, and I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with having a little chaos, and if people don't like it, they can move on.
That's how you flow. Everyone's got their own
Right.
version of that. How do you decide which projects to pursue and which to pass on?
Uh, wow. Like right now, it's not an option. I'm saying yes to pretty much everything. I mean, there's a couple things. Uh, I'm going to back up. There, there is a time. I had a good friend of mine, Connie Campanera. This is a bunch of years ago. She had me create a matrix, which was a like a graph that would help me decide whether to take a job on or not. And it was everything from how much are you getting paid, uh, and you're going to laugh at this word, but like how much exposure are you really getting? Do you enjoy doing it? Um, are you going to be working with people that you enjoy working with? It's like all those sort of things. And I had like a score that I would add up at the end. And there's things like there's a joke amongst artists about exposure bucks, where like we don't have any money, but you'll get a lot of exposure. And it's like at this
Hmm.
point, I don't need that kind of exposure because you're probably full of shit. Because if you're,
Yeah.
if that's all you're offering, and it's still. Hmm, I have this problem, and it sort of goes back to what I said before, is that I love doing what I do, and sometimes it's easy to give it away if there's nothing else going on, which sort of haunts me because once, working in the film industry, that first time I got a paycheck, it was like, oh my God, this is as much in a week than I've made in theater in like a year, right, for one week's work.
Yeah.
And you get
Yeah.
a taste of that, and you're like, oh, this is what I'm worth, right? And so I guess I've gotten a little better at saying no to abusive behavior. You know, like when people are taking advantage of you because you have nothing else, or because it's funny because I'll tell you one quick story. There was a time where I was doing a lot of very wealthy families' bar mitzvahs, and you know, again, I was coming from theater and was doing centerpieces and like these some of these things were like crazy over the top. This is before like 2008, you know, economic collapse stuff. But people were spending a lot of money and were showing off to their friends, kind of thing. So it got pretty crazy. So this woman who was hiring me as a decorator was finding out how much money I was charging for centerpieces. And I was charging like $60 a centerpiece. And these were like sculptural things. Like everyone was different, all handmade. And so she finally had me meet with a florist. And uh, the florist was an older lady. I think she was in her 80s at the time. And so I showed her the design I had for these centerpieces. And she's like, how much are you charging for these? And I'm like, I'm thinking like maybe $60. And the producer of this I told her some of my background. She goes, so you used to be like an executive secretary, right? And I said, yes. She goes, so imagine your boss hates somebody, but they have to send them flowers in the hospital. What is the least amount of money you can send? What's the cheapest bouquet that you could send them? And it hit me that was like $50. So I'm charging $10 more for these art pieces than the least amount of like a forget me not kind of bouquet. So
Yeah.
they talked me into charging, I think it was $225. And when I went to talk to the client, they were like, okay. And I was like, excuse my language, but holy shit, I've been underpricing myself for so
Yeah.
long. The woman basically said people are laughing at you because you're charging so little money. But I didn't really have any way to know what the right amount was. But enough of that kind of stuff, right? But I still have these moments where like I'm pricing something for like a commercial or something, and I have to have certain people that I call up, and I'm like, how much should I charge for this? And I'm going to charge like 2,000, and they're like, add a zero, okay, and then I do, and nobody
Yeah.
says anything, and it's like, oh my god, right?
It's
So
funny.
that's that artist thing, like
It's funny
nobody.
how
When,
we just create this. There's this like air of apology sometimes in being an artist. Like, hey, I gotta eat, man. Versus like, yeah, I've been doing this for excuse me, X number of years, and this is what I charge, or this is what I get paid because I'm a professional. And I
yeah,
think there's an interesting space where, I mean, I think I'm leaning more towards being out of that apologetic state where it's similar to when people would ask, "Oh, hey, what do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm an actor." You know, there's always a little bit of like, "Ah,
yeah.
woe is
What do you
me,
do
I'm
for
an
a living?
actor." Versus like, yeah, exactly, exactly. So, and I think that creeps into other aspects of life. You know, so as much as you love something, I think you have to also know your worth. I think that's what you're talking about there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
have you have you faced moments of self doubt about your artistic abilities, and how do you overcome them?
Uh, you ask many heavy questions. I sadly, and I guess it's somewhat. I'm sort of trying to delve into some of my own childhood and issues that I have about self worth. And I will be honest with you, and it's sad, but I would say I question every project that I do if I can do it, because there's some voice in my head that says you can't do that. But I've learned to ignore it and plow through, because even when at first maybe it's difficult and I have trouble like even getting the pen to the paper or the sketch pad or whatever, it always comes out. Um, and I all and often am surprised, like how did I do that? Like it's weird that I'm still dealing with that, but I am. But I think it weirdly is part of the motivation too, to sort of prove to myself every time that I'm more than capable of handling this project or this problem or this creative thing. So, but yeah, it's I think many artists are full of self doubt, and it's a weird. I don't know. It's a weird. I used to think that maybe it was part of being an artist that you had to have that, but I don't think that's true either. I think it's just something that you can
Yeah.
work through.
Is it a combination of kind of seeing the mountain of work before you, or is it more of like maybe there's someone more capable than me, or like all these other insidious kind of thoughts, or maybe a combination of the two?
I think it, without getting too heavy on you, I think it's all of those things. For me, it's a little bit of a childhood of negativity. Why can't you be as good as your sister? Why can't you, uh, you'll never make it as an artist. Like those things that get into your head. And I know just from my own self-help and counseling and all that stuff is that what happens is that voices that you might have heard from somebody else have a tendency to stay in your head and eventually become your voice, and then they go into your unconscious. And so the self doubt can stay there in sort of the underground, and you don't even hear it anymore. But as in one of the books I'm reading now, is that it's all learned behavior, so you can unlearn it. But unfortunately, you have to go through the process of hearing it, of pulling
Wow.
it out of the subconscious, and so that you can hear those voices that are saying that stuff, and then you can go, wait a minute, that's not true. I'm not that. I'm this. So and again, I know a lot of
That's
artists
so
that
crazy. You saying that kind of insidious voice, whoever it may be from, eventually, if it stays long enough, it maybe doesn't become your voice, but it takes on the quality of your own voice. And then when it becomes subconscious like that just blew me away because I mean, now how many things do I have in my own life that I've allowed to seemingly co-opt my voice in my own subconscious? Like that's actually really quite deep. So thank you for that.
there's I mean, you can edit this out if you want. There's a really great book that I'm in my second read on, and it's a thing called complex PTSD, and it talks about emotional, like regular PTSD is, obviously, someone that's experienced like a car accident or seen something horrific that's physical, and you keep flashing back to that. Complex PTSD is emotional flashbacks where you have these periods where you're something that somebody said to you, or whether it's abandonment or verbal abuse or whatever, you're not getting the physical visual flashback, you're getting the feeling back. So someone might say something to you that triggers something, um, that gives you this emotional thing, and again, sometimes it's like this subtle thing that rises up, um, that you're not even fully aware of, but you're stressed out. And there again, it's way too complex to. I mean, I could talk for 2 hours
Yeah.
just on that.
No, that's
But it's
yeah.
but
I'll
it's
definitely look into that.
it's a really great. I mean, I'm in. I mean, it's a little unpleasant at times, but I'm going through a great journey through this with myself to sort of uh, shut these voices off and just be more free.
Yeah. Um, what role does continuous learning and skill development play in your artistic journey?
Uh, I think um, when you think you know everything, or when you think you have enough, uh, well, I try not to be overly dramatic. I am all about learning and seeing and experiencing new things, because that's what keeps you alive and excited about life. So I feel like every project that I work on, I learn something new. I think, uh, um, oh, I can't think of who. I'm paraphrasing this. It's another quote that I sort of try to live by, but it's basically like commune with those who seek the truth and run from those who found it. Meaning, I isn't that great? It's like I would much rather hang out with people that are still learning, and whether that's spiritual or artistically or whatever. I don't mind someone that's like strong-headed about something, but if you think you're the expert on everything or know something or your way is the only right way, I'm like I'm bored, you know. So
Yeah, yeah.
right,
That
I
actually
because
goes
that's not
nicely.
what life is. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just feel like life is so full of so many cool things that that constant learning about how the brain works or uh, how nature works or how how one color works against another color. Or I just made these crazy fish puppets, and I had one of the highlights of my life is when I'm with someone that I really love, on an emotional level, but also on a creative level. And we had one of those like Jungian creative moments where we're trying to figure out how to make these fish kind of flap. And my friend Amy said, because I was going to do like wood, it was like imagine a fish made out of foam and you cut it up, and then I wanted to like, waffle like this, right? And I couldn't figure out how to do the hinge. And she's like, you got to do a fabric hinge. And as soon as she said that, I was like, oh my God, that's it. So we made these fish with two pieces of foam with a piece of fabric inside it, and then cut it up so that it will wave back and forth. And it's one of the coolest puppet things I've ever made. In fact, I'm going to be making more of those this week, for another
Nice.
event coming up. So, but yeah, I don't. Now I forgot what the question was, but
No, it's okay. It actually goes perfectly into the next one. How do you approach self-care? Is it mental, physical, spiritual, all three, some variation?
um, all of those things. Um, I have my own spiritual path that I probably need to spend more time with, but I'm sort of drawn back to that lately. Um, that is not traditional. I took on Pilates about a year and a half ago, probably one of the best
Okay.
investments I've ever done. So so I'm getting exercise. I'm getting and I say that the woods are my church these days. So I refresh myself by walking through the woods, and again going back to that looking for beautiful things uh, thing again. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think Manny Freed. I don't know if you ever knew him, uh, actor, writer in
I
Buffalo. He
believe I
lived to
met him
97, and I
maybe
remember asking him
once
one time
in
what the secret of
passing
longevity was, and he said to keep moving.
years ago.
Yep. Uh, keep moving. He said he was going to a gym and working out with a personal trainer into his 90s, right? I think he had a very full life through that period too. So a lot of
Yeah.
respect for
What strategies do you use to market and promote your work to a wider audience?
him. I think we touched on this before. It's for me, it's social media. It's I'm a dinosaur, probably still being on Facebook, but I have a pretty good following there, and Instagram, and just but I'm again trying to be. I had a nothing but art page, and I got hacked a year ago, and I haven't gone back into that yet. But I think that's part of that process. Is just, I mean, that's how you market yourself these days. Again, when I was younger, we didn't have the ability to do any of this for free. There was no way to show who you are or what you were doing. So I've tried to be better at uh, being more surgical about what I post. I still have my
Yeah.
political rants occasionally, but less than maybe I did before. Less ranting, more art, more fun.
Yeah.
So it's all about branding yourself.
I like that. That's a good philosophy. Less ranting, more art.
Yeah,
We'll attribute
yeah,
that to
yeah.
David Butler. That's your quote.
Okay, okay. In my upcoming book
Yeah.
of philosophy,
Yes. Yes. What resources, such as books, workshops, or online communities, have been particularly valuable to your growth as an artist? You mentioned a few books along the way, some quotes, but are there anything in particular that sticks out to you?
um, Oh my God, I'm short circuiting because there's so many. Um, well, I would say, in a general sense, like art galleries um, are a big thing. I'm trying to think of specific books. I mean, you've gotten some of my major quotes. I think one of the ones that's missing is "Boredom is a preview of death," which is something that I also love. Is it, isn't that great? Uh,
I mean,
the other one
it really encompasses that. Yeah, that's amazing.
it's one of those. It's one of those. I think almost is cone the right word? Where it's such a simple phrase, but the more you think about it, the more intense it gets. Um, and funny because I just told a friend of mine who's like he's depressed, right? He lost his job or whatever, and like he's just in that sort of whiny phase. And I've been there, and I said, do something, get off the couch, go outside, do something. And he texted me like, I'm because of you, I'm like working out right now, and I hate it because I'm getting sweaty. And I'm like, good, keep going, right? Um,
Good.
the other one, this is super heavy, is and I'm paraphrasing. I don't even know where this came from, but it's something like, God was lonely, and he blew himself up into a million pieces so he could spend eternity finding himself again. Um, and for me, that means my conversation with you is connecting to another piece of the divine. My connection with every person that I meet, every tree, every leaf is sort of coming together and finding, being, feeling like I'm a part of something. And I think those are the things that keep me going.
Yeah. That's funny because it goes right into the what motivates you to keep going and to continue walking on the path. I think you might have just answered it there with that beautiful quote. But
Yeah.
is there anything further that you can get into, like that keeps you going, makes you maybe jump out of bed for this for the stuff, or get out of bed when you don't necessarily want to be?
Um, I uh, I guess it sort of goes back to somewhat what I said before, is that I feel like my purpose, uh, I guess, and I'm involved in other things too, I guess, but I love creating. And so uh, that's why I get up in the morning, is to make things. And that could be friendships. It could be connections, but it's ultimately, I'm at my most happy when I'm making stuff or I'm designing things to hand to other people to make for me, I guess, which is still awkward but fun. Um, so, I mean, I don't know. I just think that I've learned to embrace life uh, fully. So even if it's a bad day or a stressful day, I'm still fully in it. Um, and I can't. I certainly have days where I don't want to get off the couch or get out of bed too. I get that. But as I was saying before, I sort of try to embrace that too.
Yeah. Um, how do you deal with failures, mistakes, regrets?
Uh, Onward, keep paddling, right? Um, I mean,
Onward. Yeah,
I
I
guess.
like that. Onward.
Well, I got this other, this is my upcoming book that, I probably will never write, but I've got this other sort of weird philosophy of life, and it sort of encompasses a whole bunch of different things. But it's this idea that life is a river and you're on it and you're in a boat. And sometimes you're in a big boat with people. Right now, we're on a boat together, talking. Sometimes, the boats will split and you'll meet further up the river, but the river keeps flowing. And I guess that's a metaphor for time to some extent, but it's so easy to get caught. And the one image I have is like when you're trying to anchor your boat in a specific time and stay there. And it's like, imagine you're in a rapids and you put an anchor down, right? And the boat's going to fill up with water, right? So you just have to, when things go wrong, it went wrong, but you still got to keep going, right? So the river keeps flowing, your boat keeps moving. I mean, the other, this is again getting into a heavy place, but when someone dies, they get off they get off on the shore and they walk into the forest, but your boat has to keep going because you're here to be alive. You're here to enjoy life. I mean, that Art of Happiness book is one of my favorite books that I've written or read over the years. I think I read it 20 years ago, the Dalai Lama, and the concept. It's been a while, but the concept is that happiness is something that we all deserve, but it's not something that you get by sitting um, and feeling sorry for yourself. It comes from getting up and doing things and being part of the world and experiencing the world around you, I guess.
Yeah. So, conversely, how do you celebrate victories, accomplishments, good ideas?
Uh, hmm. I I don't spend a lot of time on that, and it's sort of the same. I mean, um, I guess I will acknowledge when things go well, um, but I'm always on to the next thing. It would be nice to get, it works in film once an Academy Award, but that's not why I do it, right? I do it because um, I don't know. I guess there's exceptions to this. There's been certain times where I've done plays or I've made props that I'm really proud of, and or being an actor in a play, and that the audience, you come off stage and you go like, oh wow, I really got that, right? I really, I affected the
Yeah.
audience. Or someone comes up after you and says, oh my God, you made me cry, or whatever. So those are really nice, and that's what I guess those are just acknowledgments that you did what you were supposed to do, right? But I guess in the same way, I don't really dwell on all that. Maybe I should do more of that, but I don't. It's like again, it's that boat thing. Onward, onward. What's the next? Okay, great. We did great on that. What's the next one? You know.
Yeah. Do you have any daily habits or rituals? And if so, what are they?
Um, my hmm, my spiritual path has been. I mean, I was raised a good Christian boy, and then I kind of got rejected from my family and my church when I came out. This is a long, long time ago. So I sort of went on my own sort of spiritual path, which included, Buddhism and Wicca. And so I do have some things that I use to help me balance without getting into a lot of details. But I,
Hmm.
I do meditation that sort of flows along those paths. And I don't do that enough. Again, when I get stressed out, I have a tendency to not be able to relax, but I have those tools, and it could be, lighting a candle or incense, or just visualizing being in the center of things. Um, but those are things that I definitely have relied on for many years, and I had some really great teachers um, over the last 3 decades or so.
Great. What advice do you have for someone who is just starting their journey as an artist? And then that could be to 18, 19-year-old David Butler, or that could be towards the cosmic version of that person today that is in a just happens to be in a different body.
I think everybody's. Yeah, that's a tough one because everybody's situation is different. But I'm going to quote Robert Creeley, uh, a major American poet and Buff State or UB professor. I think he passed a bunch of years ago. But one of the things that he said with the same question is like, how do I become a writer? And his response was 6 words: read, 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 and write, write, write. Right. So uh, if you want to be an artist, you have to make art, and you have to hone your skills, uh, and you have to find inspiration. And these are all, this is from doing it. Um, you know, there's again, you can think about it, but it's getting your hands dirty where you learn stuff. It's connecting. We talk about networking. It's connecting with other artists. It's seeing what other artists do. It's again, I'm going to use immersing yourself in whatever you want to do, right? And you have to become the artist that you want to hire or that you want to work with. You know, they think it's funny because they say when you're single that you should become the person that you want to fall in love with. And I think
Mm,
it's the same with art. It's like you have to become the artist that you want to see, whose work you want to see, right? And that comes from not from sitting around, but getting in it, getting your hands dirty, and making stuff.
yeah, I love that. Um, how do you envision your artistic journey evolving in the future? So I've been putting it to people like in a Stanislavski sense. What's the super objective, if there is one?
Uh, um, it's so again, my main focus, hopefully in the future, will be back into the film industry again. And I mean, I've got some cool things going on, you know, and I guess I want to make good art. I want to, I want to be able to afford just a basic life. Um, and I want to make people laugh and cry and scare the shit out of them and all of those things, right? And I want to do it in the best that I can, and I want to do it with people that are good at what they do, right? And I don't need to be rich. I don't need to be famous. I guess I want to be acknowledged to some extent, but I was talking to a bunch of students at Buff State, like it was like a year ago, that were theater students, and I get that every college wants you to go to New York and become a famous actor. But I said, I stayed here in a small city, and the audiences here, just like they do on Broadway, want to feel something. They want to experience something. They want to, laugh, cry, whatever, together, right? And it doesn't matter whether you're paying $350 a ticket or 35, right? It's like we're human beings and we need art. So I guess I want to be effective, in whatever it is that I'm doing, and I want to. I guess it goes back to that. If I get the opportunity to do something as effective as streamers was to me, to inspire me to go into a career or to think about things differently, that's the high art that I guess I would strive for. You always get to do that, but occasionally, right?
Yeah. What do you think is one of the most excuse me, what do you think is the most misunderstood thing about you?
uh, that's really hard. I don't know. Oh, I think it's my introvertedness because I think I sometimes come across as antisocial or hopefully not arrogant. But there's been a number of um, one in particular, theater organizations that kept inviting me to um, picnics and things like that, and uh, I'm not interested in that so much. Like I don't want to join your group. And I think it just sometimes it maybe comes across as being weird or whatever. I'm happy, with what I do, but I recharge by being with myself, you know, which is
Okay.
sort of like the
Yeah.
main definition of being introverted, right? Um, but that's gotten me into trouble a couple times, right? So, but I think,
So no, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
yeah, I think I sort of started the sentence by ending it. So I don't. That was it. It's funny because I want to say, what do you misunderstand about me? But I don't know. I'm good.
No, I find that interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's a question that I had. A lot of these questions are questions that I have for myself,
Mm.
and I try to. Damn, I got it. So a lot of these questions are questions that I have for myself, and so when I put them down, it's really just a matter of the person I'm speaking to, do they maybe deal with those same types of questions?
Hmm.
It doesn't come up all the time, but I think that to myself. I was like, am I, is there something that's really misunderstood about me or something that I'm not, do I need to clarify it? Is it something that's bothering me? It's sometimes it can be a little philosophical rabbit hole, but I
Oh
find it
yeah.
to be an interesting question because, I think we all have a little bit of that, or we have perceptions. People have perceptions of us that aren't uniform because every one of the 8 billion people on this planet have a totally different experience of life. So,
Yeah, it's funny because you just as you were talking, I had flashbacks. Like I grew up in a suburban. We moved around a lot, um, but a suburban neighborhood where it was all about perception and who was who and who was hanging out with who and who had their Christmas lights up too long and who hadn't sealed their driveway and they haven't mowed their lawn in a week. Like all this just outrageous bullshit. And I think uh, because of that and seeing how ridiculous that was, that I sort of reject. And maybe I'm fooling myself by saying this because maybe I do care what people think. But it's that same thing. It's like I'm just paddling down the river. I don't really care. As long as if I was self-destructive and was destroying myself or something else, then maybe it would be more important for me to care. But um, I, uh, I don't don't care. Uh,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you know what I mean? Because I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where all the dads left at the same time. Like everything was perfect, and it wasn't until uh, my all my close group of friends in college, we all came back, and all the secrets started to come out. This is like a two-car garage kind of upper middle class neighborhood, and the women in my group of friends were getting the crap beat out of them by their dads. One was being sexually abused. A lot of the guys in my group were gay, but we couldn't talk about it until we all went off to college. And many of them came out like I did, like away from home. Um, and so it was. I just sort of realized how ridiculous all that was. There was a family that moved into my neighborhood. This is in the Binghamton, New York area, very IBM, General Electric kind of white collar neighborhood. And they were very
Hmm.
unfriendly. And of course, that was part of dinner conversation is how unfriendly they were. Well, they went on vacation and didn't tell anybody. And while they were gone, 18-wheeler truck pulled up to their house and literally emptied their house of all their furniture. And it was thieves, but nobody even knew because they weren't talking to anybody. And it's that sort of crime stuff that nobody talks about. But it was almost funny to
Wow.
me that something of the safe neighborhood. It's not like somebody like stole somebody's wallet on the street in New York. It's like they literally emptied an entire house of stuff.
Yeah.
Hey,
Wow.
crazy.
I mean, that makes me think like, what's then, what is the meaning of community? Because if you're a part of a community, you would hope that someone would say, like, yo, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Because you actually care about the community versus your community being a space where you're gossiping or backbiting or talking about someone else. Because then it's not
Yeah,
a
real
community. It's
community.
just it's just a place that you're all stuck together.
Right, and that's you. Community is neither of those things, right? It's not being silent and it's not being gossipy. It's like that. It's supportive. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. But I think that's hard to find
Yeah.
these days, unless you create it yourself.
Yeah. Last of the main questions: coffee, tea, or something else?
I'm a coffee guy. I'm a coffee guy.
Oh, okay.
And well, it's funny because my fabulous landlords are originally from Colombia, and they have an amazing story on their own. But they just, I don't know, probably, I'm guessing maybe 5 years ago, they got their family farm back that had been taken from them years ago, and they just started to uh, produce coffee from this like
Wow.
mountainside in Colombia, and it's the best coffee I've ever had. And they're occasionally generous with it. So yeah,
Nice.
not a Tim Hortons Dunkin' Donuts guy. I like a good coffee. So
Well, you'll definitely have a coffee on me as a thank you for doing this. So, um,
well, thank you. No,
on to the next section. It's called Cosmic Roll of the Dice. So I kind of came up with this idea that there's like these 20 kind of philosophically based artistic questions. I can't possibly ask all of them, otherwise, we'll be here all day. So I figured let me take some dice, I'll roll it. Whatever the number comes up to the corresponding question, the guest will answer that. So if you're down, we'll
I'm,
do a cosmic roll of the
let's
dice.
go. Let's go.
All right.
Wow.
I think this is the first time that 20. Hold on, let me grab these real quick. Am I
Oh my
counting
God.
correctly?
I can't hardly see them, but I trust you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
6, 6, 12. That's 18, 19, 20. Okay, question 20. Let's see.
Wow. Is that good or bad? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, how does the concept of impermanence intersect with art? Can art outlive its creator? And what does that mean for its significance?
Wow. Um, wow. Okay. It's weird that you're asking me that
I can
question.
repeat that. I can repeat that too, if you
No,
need to
no,
hear it again, because I
no, I get what the question is, and it's weird that you're asking me because I'm not a gallery artist. I'm not a sculptor. I guess up until the film stuff, really very little of what I've made would last anywhere at all because I'm most of the stuff that I've done has been um, performative, like performance art, fleeting, theater sets that get painted over. And so unless you came to see it, it's gone. And so it's funny because there was a point in my life where I thought I would be a gallery artist. And I've been teased about it, even more recently. People have said, we're going to ask you to do a gallery exhibit with all of your theater stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, that's cool. But it just never seems to actually take fruition. So, um, I mean, I can only speak for myself, I guess. I'm okay with that. Um, I guess we all want to have a legacy of some kind, but I also feel like every time, I'm trying to think of how to say this. Like every time something happens or a performance takes place, or a set is ready, it's it's that experience that's you're giving birth to something, and then you're watching it. It may be alive for 2 hours and then it's gone, but that experience is um, is what I is the process that I'm in, right? Um, I mean the moments, the highs of uh, having. Oh my God, I'm short circuiting. There's so many. An example would be uh, I did this. There's a film called After the Sun Fell, and this woman had played this mother role on Broadway or off Broadway for a bunch of years, and so she wanted to do a film version of it. And in theater, you're going to see a set, and depending on the theater, you're going to see that set for the whole 2 hour thing. Where in this case, we were dressing an entire house and one particular room where most of the action took place in. And this character was kind of hoarding things all into one room. Without getting into all the details of the film, but so this actress had played this role over and over and over again, and uh, she came from New York to we shot this up in Lewiston, and we were pretty close to being set. I think we were going to start shooting the next day. So she got off the plane. She comes to the set. she comes into the room and she starts tearing up and she goes, "This is my house." And she was speaking as the character. So we had created a space that was accurate enough for what she had in her head. I'd never talked to this woman, but it's from the script, right? Of what this room might look like. And it was like her first time being in a 3D version of this space. Um, and that was like a high, like I didn't know this woman from Adam, but the fact that we had created this thing for her to perform in, that she got emotionally, she welled up because of the quality of what we had done. That was like, um, that's my art gallery opening, right? That's my
Hmm.
applause. Um, and then it's gone, right? 2 days later, it's painted over and put back the way it was. So it's weird because sometimes I think as I get older, it's like I wish I had, something to be remembered by or whatever. But I don't know. It's that's not the world I live in.
Yeah, and those moments are beautiful. I think as I progress in my career, I hope that I take in those moments um, in a deeper way. Because I think in the past I would just be on to the next one, on to the next one, and then kind of forget to honor moments like that, like those really beautiful surprises where, like you say, you're on the boat or you're on the raft with somebody on the river, and it's just this beautiful moment, and then sometimes you have to part ways and adieu until next time, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's beautiful. Whether it goes, you know, beyond me is, no pun intended, beyond me. So I just kind of hopefully moment
Well,
to
I
moment.
think
So I can totally relate to that.
yeah, I know the quality of your work, and I know that you've had moments on stage, numerous ones where you know that you may not realize it until you get off stage, but that you've affected the audience. So, and I mean that's why we do it, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Storytelling.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's absolute honor to like pick your brain and kind of get to have this type of conversation, because these are things that I really love. These have always been the kinds of conversations that I, whether it's at a, you know, post show party or something like that. Sometimes you get little glimpses of these types of conversations with people, but it's always been my favorite part of knowing fellow artists and creatives and just being able to kind of see how they walk through this life and this need to do this thing and express themselves. So genuinely, thank you very much.
My pleasure. I was very honored that you asked me because I have a lot of respect for you, my friend. So onward we
Thanks.
go.